From BBC Learning English, this is Learning English from the News, our podcast about the news headlines.
In this programme, a ceasefire between Iran and Israel.
Hello, I'm Neil.
And I'm Pippa.
In this programme, we look at one big news story and the vocabulary in the headlines that will help you understand it.
You can find all the vocabulary and headlines from this episode, as well as a worksheet on our website, bbclearningenglish.com.
So let's hear more about this story.
US President Donald Trump announced a ceasefire between Iran and Israel on Tuesday.
It comes after over a week of attacks between Iran and Israel and airstrikes on Iran by the US military at the weekend.
At first, strikes continued between the two countries, Iran and Israel, after the ceasefire was announced. But now the agreement appears to be holding.
Let's have our first headline.
This one's from Al Jazeera. How the Iran-Israel ceasefire is meant to play out.
That headline again from Al Jazeera. How the Iran-Israel ceasefire is meant to play out.
This headline is about the ceasefire plan.
And we're interested in this phrasal verb, play out. Now, like most phrasal verbs, it contains a familiar verb at the beginning, but the verb play here doesn't help us, does it?
Well, it helps if you think of play like when you play a video. So when a situation plays out, it happens or develops.
Yes, that's a good way of thinking of it. So in the headline, how the Iran-Israel ceasefire is meant to play out, it's talking about how the ceasefire is meant to happen if things go to plan.
Another way we commonly use play out is to say, let's see how something plays out. This means wait until a situation happens or develops, perhaps before making a decision.
We have a similar phrase, let something play itself out. This means to wait for a situation to happen or develop without interfering. So, for example, a government might wait for economic uncertainty to play itself out before making any big decisions. They wait for the situation to develop.
We've had play out, happen or develop.
For example, I'm not feeling that well, so I'll see how things play out before making any plans for the weekend. This is Learning English from the News, our podcast about the news headlines. Today we're talking about the ceasefire between Iran and Israel.
As we've heard, the ceasefire between Iran and Israel was difficult to maintain at first.
US President Trump was critical of both countries. In an angry comment to reporters, he swore and said he was not happy.
And our next headline is about Trump's reaction to the strikes that happened after the ceasefire.
This headline is from the New York Times. Trump lashes out at Israel and Iran as fragile truce is tested.
That headline again from the New York Times. Trump lashes out at Israel and Iran as fragile truce is tested.
So this headline says that the truce between Israel and Iran is being tested. A truce is an agreement to stop fighting for a short period of time, like a ceasefire.
And the headline also says Trump lashes out at Israel and Iran. Can you explain this phrasal verb lash out, Neil?
Yes, so if someone lashes out at someone, it means they suddenly attack them quite violently. And it comes from the verb lash, which describes what you do with a whip when you hit something.
If you lash out at someone, it can be a physical attack, or more commonly, it can mean that you speak to or about someone in an angry or violent way.
And that's the meaning in the headline. Trump lashes out at Israel and Iran. Trump has criticized the countries using angry words.
A note on prepositions. We usually say lash out at when we want to say who the attack is directed towards. But we can also use lash out on its own when we talk about more general attacks. For example, my friend's daughter seems unhappy at the moment. She's always lashing out.
We had lash out. Attack suddenly and violently, often with words.
For example, he lashed out at his boss when he didn't get the promotion. It wasn't very professional. This is Learning English from the News from BBC Learning English. We're talking about the ceasefire between Iran and Israel.
The ceasefire comes after a dramatic week in the region, which saw missiles exchanged between Iran and Israel.
The US military also attacked Iran at the weekend to target nuclear sites in the country.
President Trump has said that the US attacks were very successful, but experts have questioned this.
Let's have another headline. This one's from BBC News. If Iran and Israel do stop firing, Trump's high-risk strikes may pay off.
That headline again from BBC News. If Iran and Israel do stop firing, Trump's high-risk strikes may pay off. Now, this headline was written when the ceasefire was first announced.
Yes, and the headline talks about President Trump's handling of the conflict and questions whether the US strikes on Iran might pay off. We're interested in the phrasal verb pay off.
And we see the word pay here, but again, it's a phrasal verb, so this isn't really about money or payments in a literal sense.
Yes, if something pays off, it means it ends in success and is worthwhile. And we often use pay off in situations which involve hard work or big gambles.
Yes, so in the headline, Trump's high-risk strikes may pay off. Trump's decision to strike Iran may have been worth the risk, because it may succeed in achieving the president's aims.
You'll often hear the phrase pay off in news stories about politics, where people often have to make difficult decisions or take big risks.
But we can also use pay off for everyday situations. For example, my friend's got an exam coming up. I hope all her revision pays off and she does well.
We've had pay off, end in success after an effort or risk.
For example, my mum wasn't sure about moving to the countryside, but the decision has paid off. She loves it.
That's it for this episode of Learning English from the News. We'll be back next week with another news story.
In the meantime, sign up to our email newsletter to hear all about our latest programs. There's a link in the notes below this episode.
And don't forget to follow us on social media. Search BBC Learning English.
Goodbye for now.
Bye.